December 16th, 1944, 5:30 a.m., the Ardennes Forest, Belgium. An American soldier crouched in his foxhole, watching the fog roll through the frozen pines. It was quiet, too quiet. For weeks, this had been a ghost front, a quiet sector where exhausted divisions rested and new recruits got their first taste of the front lines. Nothing ever happened here. Then, at 5:30 a.m., the ground began to shake. Artillery, thousands of guns, German guns. The largest artillery barrage on the Western Front since D-Day erupted across an 85-mile front. 30 minutes later, 250,000 German soldiers, the largest German offensive since 1940, crashed into 80,000 surprised Americans. Hitler's last desperate gamble had begun. This is the story of the Battle of the Bulge. December 1944. The Allies were winning. 6 months after D-Day, Hitler's Thousand-Year Reich was collapsing. Paris, liberated in August. Belgium, freed in September. The Rhine River, Germany's last natural barrier, was in sight. American, British, and Canadian forces had driven 400 miles from Normandy. Soviet armies were advancing from the east. Germany was being crushed from both sides. Allied intelligence predicted the war would end by Christmas, maybe sooner. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, was planning the final push into Germany for January 1945. The only question was, which Allied general would capture Berlin first? American soldiers bought Christmas presents in Belgian shops. They wrote letters home promising they'd be back by New Year's. The war was almost over, or so they thought. 600 miles east, in his bunker at the Wolf's Lair, Adolf Hitler faced reality. Germany was losing on every front. Every day, the Soviets were 300 miles from Berlin. The Western Allies were at Germany's border. His armies were retreating. His cities were burning under Allied bombs. Most of his generals urged negotiation. Surrender. The war was lost. Hitler refused. He had one more card to play. One final gamble. If it succeeded, he could split the Allied armies, recapture Antwerp, the Allies' crucial supply port, force a negotiated peace, and turn all German forces east to fight the Soviets. If it failed, Germany would collapse within months. On October 22, 1944, Hitler summoned his top generals and presented his plan. Operation Walk am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine. A massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes Forest. The same route Germany had used to invade France in 1940. 250,000 men, 1,000 tanks. Strike through the weakest point of the Allied line. Drive 100 miles to Antwerp. Split the American and British armies. Destroy 30 Allied divisions. His generals were stunned. It was impossible. Germany didn't have the fuel, the reserves, the air power. Hitler didn't care. This battle will decide whether we live or die. I am determined to carry it through. The order was given. The trap was set. The Americans had no idea what was coming. The Ardennes Forest, eastern Belgium. 85 miles of front line held by only 4 American divisions, about 80,000 men. This was the Ghost Front. Quiet, peaceful, a place for exhausted divisions to rest and green recruits to learn the ropes. The terrain was considered tank-proof, dense forests, narrow roads, steep hills. No one expected a major attack here. The defenders included 106th Infantry Division *, just arrived from the U.S. 2 weeks at the front, green as grass. 28th Infantry Division * battered in the Hurtgen Forest, sent here to rest. 99th Infantry Division * another new division, never seen combat. 4th Infantry Division * veterans, but exhausted. 80,000 Americans holding 85 miles. That's one soldier per 50 feet. Across the line in the German forest, 250,000 Germans were massing. 3-1 advantage. In some sectors, 10-1. The Americans didn't know. Allied intelligence had written off the possibility of a German offensive. Germany was beaten. They had no reserves, no fuel, no hope. They were wrong. November-December 1944. The German buildup. Under complete secrecy, Germany assembled its last reserves. 250,000 men, 1,000 tanks, and assault guns, including 100-plus Tiger and Panther heavy tanks. 900 artillery pieces, 800 aircraft, every fighter Germany could spare. 3 armies, 6 TH Panzer Army, North SS divisions, Germany's elite. 5 TH Panzer Army, Center Wehrmacht armored units. 7 TH Army, South Infantry, to protect the flank. The buildup was masterful. All movement at night, engines muffled, radio silence, fighter patrols preventing Allied reconnaissance. Even German soldiers didn't know the plan until 24 hours before the attack. The objective, Antwerp, 100 miles through Belgium. The route, through the Ardennes. Through the Americans. The timing, December 16th, during the worst weather of the winter. Allied air power would be grounded by fog. Everything depended on surprise. Everything depended on speed. Hitler needed to reach Antwerp in 7 days before Allied reserves could respond. By December 15th, the trap was set. 250,000 Germans, facing 80,000 Americans. The Americans suspected nothing. December 16th, 1944, 5:30 a.m., 1,900 German guns opened fire simultaneously. For 30 minutes, the Ardennes forest exploded. American positions disappeared under curtains of fire. Foxholes collapsed. Trees shattered. Communications cut. Men huddled in frozen holes, praying the next shell wouldn't find them. Then, at 6 a.m., the barrage lifted. Silence. Through the fog and smoke, a sound. Engines. Hundreds of engines. Tanks. Then, searchlights. German searchlights pointed at the low clouds, creating artificial moonlight to illuminate the battlefield. Through the fog came 250,000 German soldiers, screaming, firing, overwhelming thin American lines. The ghost front had awakened. By 8 a.m., German forces had penetrated American lines across the entire 85-mile front. Confusion reigned. Radio communications were cut. Phone lines destroyed. American units had no idea what was happening. Individual companies found themselves surrounded. Some fought to the death. Others surrendered. Many retreated in confusion. The Green 106th Division, in position for only 2 weeks, collapsed. 2 entire regiments, 8,000 men, were cut off and surrounded. The 99th Division, also green, held longer than expected, but they were being pushed back. The 28th Division's sector was overrun. Villages fell within hours. By noon, German panzer columns were 10 miles behind American lines. By evening, 15 miles. The Bulge, a massive salient pushing into Allied territory, was forming. At Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force, SHEF, in Paris, confused reports arrived. Heavy German attack in the Ardennes. Multiple divisions engaged. Communications lost with forward units. Eisenhower's staff initially dismissed it as a local counterattack, a spoiling action. By afternoon, the scale became clear. This wasn't a raid. This was an offensive, the largest German attack in the West since 1940. Eisenhower immediately ordered reinforcements. The 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, and 10th Armored Division rushed toward the Ardennes, but they would take 2 to 3 days to arrive. The Germans had that long to break through. Leading the German advance was Kampfgruppe, commanded by SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Paper. This battle group was Germany's spearhead, 100-plus tanks and vehicles, 5,000 SS troops. Tiger II King Tigers, the most powerful tanks in the world. Paper's orders: drive fast, don't stop, reach the Meuse River in 48 hours. No prisoners, no delays. Paper smashed through American positions. His tanks bypassed strong points, leaving infantry to mop up. By December 17th, Paper's Kampfgruppe was 25 miles behind American lines, the deepest penetration. He was unstoppable, but he was also running out of fuel. German logistics were collapsing. Paper's tanks were supposed to capture American fuel depots, but the Americans were destroying them before retreating. Every mile Paper advanced, his fuel gauge dropped, and in his wake, he left atrocities. December 17th, 1944, near Malmedy, Belgium. Camp Grub Paper captured 120 American soldiers from the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion. The Americans surrendered. They were POWs. Protected under the Geneva Convention, Paper's men herded them into a field, then opened fire. 84 Americans were murdered, shot where they stood. Some tried to run. They were hunted down. A few survived by playing dead under the bodies of their comrades. They testified later. The Malmedy Massacre became the most notorious war crime committed against American forces in Europe. After the war, Paper was tried and convicted. He spent 11 years in prison. But in the moment, the massacre had a different effect. When news spread, American soldiers stopped taking SS prisoners. The battle became more savage, more personal. This wasn't just war anymore. It was revenge. As German forces flooded westward, some American units refused to break. St. Vith, a crucial road junction in eastern Belgium. If the Germans took St. Vith, they could use its road to funnel their entire offensive west, defending it. Elements of the 7th Armored Division and remnants of the shattered 106th Division, maybe 15,000 men, against 3 German divisions, 45,000 troops. For 6 days, the Americans held. German attacks came from 3 directions. Panzers probed the defenses. Artillery pounded the town. The defenders held. House by house, street by street. They couldn't win, but they could delay. Every day St. Vith held was one more day for Allied reinforcements to arrive. By December 21st, the position was hopeless. The Americans were surrounded on 3 sides. Orders came, evacuate, fall back, but they'd bought 6 precious days. St. Vith fell on December 21st, but the American stand had slowed the German timetable. Hitler's 7-day plan was already behind schedule. December 18, 1944. Eisenhower and his staff studied the map. One town kept appearing, Bastogne, a small Belgian market town. Population 4,000, but strategically vital. 7 major roads met at Bastogne, the only good roads through the Ardennes. Whoever held Bastogne controlled the battlefield. German pincers were closing on the town. If they captured it, their tanks would fan out and reach the Meuse River. Eisenhower made the call, hold Bastogne, at all costs. The 101st Airborne Division was rushed from reserve. They arrived in trucks, having been pulled from rest 100 miles away. No winter clothing, low ammunition, no time to prepare. Racing against time, the 101st reached Bastogne on December 19th. Hours later, German forces surrounded the town. The 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, were trapped. 10,500 American paratroopers, surrounded by 45,000 Germans. The siege of Bastogne had begun. December 20th, 1944. Bastogne was surrounded. The 101st Airborne dug in around the town's perimeter, a ring of foxholes in frozen ground. But they were not prepared for winter warfare. The division had been in reserve when the German attack came. They'd rushed to Bastogne in trucks. No time to gather winter equipment. Most paratroopers wore summer uniforms. No overcoats. No gloves. No winter boots. Temperatures dropped to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 18 degrees Celsius. Snow fell constantly. Men stood in foxholes with frozen feet, hands too numb to operate weapons. They stuffed newspapers under their uniforms for warmth. Medics couldn't treat frostbite. There were too many cases and too few supplies. Ammunition was running low. Artillery shells were rationed. Food was scarce. The soldiers ate 1 meal a day, usually cold K rations, and the Germans attacked constantly, probing assaults, artillery barges, tank attacks, testing the defenses, looking for weakness. The 101st held. Barely. Their commander, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, sent desperate messages to headquarters. Need ammunition. Need medical supplies. Need reinforcements. The response, Hold on. Patton is coming. December 22nd, 1944. German forces had battered Bastion's defenses for 3 days. The Americans were running out of everything. The German commander sent an ultimatum under white flag, asterisk, to the USA commander of the encircled town of Bastogne, asterisk. Asterisk, the fortune of war is changing. Your troops are completely surrounded. There is only one possibility to save your encircled troops from total annihilation: the honorable surrender of the encircled town, asterisk. Asterisk, if this proposal is rejected, 1 German artillery corps and 6 heavy AA battalions are ready to annihilate the USA troops. All the serious civilian losses caused by this artillery fire would not correspond with the well-known American humanity. Asterisk, the German commander. The message was delivered to General McAuliffe. He read it, looked at his staff. His initial response, "Ah, nuts." His staff laughed. One officer suggested, "Why don't you just send that back?" McAuliffe agreed. The official response was typed, asterisk, to the German commander, asterisk. Nuts, the American commander. The German officers didn't understand the American slang. It had to be explained. It means go to hell. The response electrified American forces. It was radioed to headquarters. It made newspapers back home. Nuts became the battle cry of Bastogne. But defiance didn't stop German tanks. The siege continued. Ammunition dwindled. Casualties mounted. Without resupply, Bastogne would fall. December 23rd, 1944. For 7 days, fog had blanketed the Ardennes. Allied air power, the decisive advantage, was grounded. Then, on the morning of December 23rd, the weather broke. Clear skies. Sunshine. Within hours, the sky filled with aircraft. See, 47 cargo planes, the same aircraft that had dropped the 101st over Normandy on D-Day, now dropped supplies over Bastogne. Flying at 500 feet, through German anti-aircraft fire, the planes released parachute bundles, ammunition, medical supplies, food, blankets, plasma for the wounded. The paratroopers on the ground cheered. They called it the hole in the sky. Over 3 days, 962 tons of supplies were dropped. Not all made it. Some bundles landed in German lines. Some planes were shot down, but enough got through. Bastogne could hold, and overhead, Allied fighters and bombers appeared. For the first time since December 16th, Allied air power hammered German positions. Tank columns were strafed. Supply convoys destroyed. German fighters were swept from the sky. The weather had turned. The tide was shifting. But Bastogne was still surrounded, still under siege. And ammunition was still being rationed. They needed relief. On the ground, they needed Patton. December 19th, 1944. Verdun, France. Eisenhower summoned his top commanders for an emergency meeting. The situation was grim. German forces had penetrated 30 miles. Bastogne was surrounded. The Allied front was splitting. Eisenhower needed a counterattack. Fast. General George S. Patton, commanding U.S. Third Army south of the Bulge, was asked, "When can you attack north to relieve Bastogne?" Most generals would have said a week, maybe 10 days. Moving an entire army 90 degrees from attacking east to attacking north required repositioning hundreds of thousands of men, thousands of vehicles, reorganizing supply lines. In winter, under fire, Patton answered immediately. December 22nd, 3 days. The room went silent. Patton continued, "I'll attack with 3 divisions. 4th Armored will spearhead. They'll reach Bastogne in 48 hours. It was impossible. Everyone knew it. Eisenhower said, "Do it." Patton did. On December 22nd, Patton's 3rd Army pivoted north and attacked. 3 divisions. 4th Armored, 26th Infantry, 80th Infantry. The race to Bastogne had begun. December 22nd to 26, 1944. Patton's 4th Armored Division drove north toward Bastogne. But it wasn't a parade. Every mile was contested. German forces defending the southern shoulder of the Bulge fought savagely. They knew if Patton broke through, the entire offensive would collapse. Anti-tank guns ambushed American tanks. Panthers dueled with Shermans. Infantry fought house to house in frozen villages. The 4th Armored averaged 5 miles per day, slower than Patton wanted. In Bastogne, the 101st held on, barely. German attacks intensified. They knew Patton was coming. They needed to take Bastogne before he arrived. Christmas Eve, December 24th. German tanks broke through Bastogne's perimeter near the village of Champs. Hand-to-hand fighting. Paratroopers with bazookas stalking tigers in the dark. The line held by 100 yards. Christmas Day, December 25th. The 101st ate cold K rations in frozen foxholes. German artillery shelled the town. Some men sang Christmas carols between explosions. Chaplain prayed, "Lord, we ask for one thing. Clear weather so Patton can get here." December 26, 1944, 4:50 p.m. The lead tanks of the 4th Armored Division broke through German lines and entered Bastogne. The siege was lifted. The 101st had held for 7 days. Surrounded, outnumbered, freezing. They had not broken. The siege of Bastogne was over, but the cost was staggering. American casualties in Bastogne asterisk: 105 killed, 536 wounded, 596 missing. But those numbers don't tell the full story. Thousands suffered frostbite. Many lost toes, feet, fingers. Some would never fight again. Psychological trauma, shell shock. Men who'd held the line for 7 days under constant bombardment, in freezing temperatures, with no relief in sight. The German casualties were higher, estimated 2,000 killed, 6,000 plus wounded. Unknown missing. Bastogne had cost both sides dearly, but strategically it was decisive. By holding Bastogne, the Americans had denied Germany the road network they needed. The offensive stalled. Patton's relief proved the German advance could be stopped. The Bulge had reached its deepest point, 60 miles into Allied territory. Now the Germans had to defend what they'd taken, and the Allies had air superiority back. The Battle of the Bulge was far from over, but the momentum had shifted. While Bastogne held, Camp Grupp Paper, Germany's deepest penetration, met disaster. Paper had driven 60 miles behind American lines, the farthest advance of the entire offensive, but he'd run out of fuel. His tanks were stranded in the village of La Glise, out of gasoline, out of ammunition, surrounded by American forces. Paper radioed for resupply. None came. German logistics had collapsed. He radioed for permission to break out. Denied. Hold your position. For 3 days, Paper's Camp Grupp was pounded by American artillery and air strikes. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, Paper made the decision. Abandon the tanks. Escape on foot. His men destroyed their vehicles. 100-plus tanks, including 12 massive King Tigers, were blown up or set on fire. Then, in the middle of the night, Paper led his remaining 800 men out of 5,000 through American lines on foot, walking through snow-covered forests, carrying wounded, dodging American patrols. On December 25th, Paper reached German lines. He'd escaped, but his Camp Grupp was destroyed. The German spearhead, the unit that was supposed to reach the Meuse River, had been defeated, not by American tanks, by logistics. Germany didn't have the fuel to sustain the offensive. December 24th, 1944, the German offensive reached its maximum extent, a 60-mile deep bulge into Allied territory, 40 miles wide at its base. But they had not reached the Meuse River, 40 miles short. They had not split the Allied armies. They had not captured Antwerp, still 100 miles away. Hitler's timetable called for reaching Antwerp in 7 days. It was day 8. The Germans hadn't even reached the Meuse. Every objective had failed. Fuel depots not captured. Americans destroyed them. Allied air power not neutralized, whether cleared on day 7. American resistance underestimated. St. Vith Bastogne held. Logistics collapsed, no fuel, no ammunition. The offensive had failed, but Hitler refused to admit it. He ordered his generals to continue attacking. Take Bastogne. Push to the Meuse. His generals knew it was hopeless, but they obeyed. The Battle of the Bulge would continue for another month, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Germany had gambled everything and lost. December 23, 1944. The fog lifted. For the first time in a week, Allied air power returned, and it was devastating. Thousands of sorties. 47 Thunderbolts strafing German columns. 51 Mustangs escorting bombers and hunting German fighters. B-17 and 24 heavy bombers carpet-bombing German positions. 47 transports dropping supplies to Bastogne. The Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, tried to contest the skies. They were swept aside. Germany had assembled 800 aircraft for the offensive. By January, half were destroyed. On the ground, German soldiers called it jabba-jagged fighter-bomber hunt. Allied fighters hunted German vehicles relentlessly. Tanks couldn't move during daylight without being attacked. Supply convoys were incinerated on the roads. Troop movements became suicidal. The German offensive, dependent on speed and surprise, ground to a halt. Without air cover, without fuel, without supplies, the German army in the Bulge was trapped. Now they had to defend, and winter was getting worse. Winter 1944-45 was the coldest in 30 years. Temperatures dropped to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 29 degrees Celsius. Snow measured in feet. Ice covered everything. The cold killed as efficiently as bullets. Frostbite casualties asterisk. American, 15,000 plus cases. German, estimated 20,000 plus cases. Soldiers in foxholes couldn't feel their feet. Boots froze solid. Removing them meant frostbite. Weapons froze. Machine guns jammed. Rifles wouldn't fire. Vehicles wouldn't start. Engines had to be kept running or they'd freeze. Wounded men froze to death before reaching aid stations. Medics performed amputations in field hospitals. Toes, feet, fingers. The dead couldn't be buried. The ground was frozen solid. Bodies were stacked, covered with snow, waiting for spring. For both sides, winter was as deadly as the enemy. Men fought not just Germans or Americans, but the cold. Many lost. Late December 1944. The German advance had stalled. Now the Allies prepared to counterattack. Eisenhower's plan was simple: cut off the Bulge. Northern pincer * British and American forces under Montgomery would attack south. Southern pincer * Patton's Third Army would attack north from Bastogne. Western Wall * First Army would hold the western edge of the Bulge. The goal: encircle and destroy the German forces trapped in the salient. Eisenhower massed overwhelming force. 29 divisions versus Germany's 30, but at half strength. 3,000 plus tanks. 6,000 plus aircraft. Unlimited supplies. Germany had gambled its last reserves. They were depleted. No reinforcements. Low fuel. No air cover. The Allies had everything. By January 1st, 1945, the counteroffensive began. January 3rd, 1945. Patton's Third Army drove north from Bastogne. The same 4th Armored Division that had relieved Bastogne now spearheaded the attack. German resistance was fierce. They held every village, every hill, every crossroad, but they were losing. Day by day, the Allies pushed north. German units fell back, retreated, collapsed. The Bulge was shrinking. Belgian villages were liberated. Civilians who'd suffered under German occupation for 3 weeks celebrated as American tanks rolled in. German POWs, cold, exhausted, demoralized, marched south in long columns. The vaunted German offensive had become a desperate retreat. January 3rd, 1945. The northern pincer attacked. British forces and American First Army, under temporary British command, drove south into the Bulge. Montgomery, cautious as always, advanced methodically. Artillery preparation, infantry assault, consolidate, repeat, slower than Patton, but effective. German forces in the north, weakened by weeks of combat and attrition, fell back. The two Allied pincers, Patton from the south, Montgomery from the north, were closing. If they met, the German forces in the Bulge would be encircled. Hitler's generals begged for permission to withdraw. "We'll be surrounded, destroyed." Hitler refused. "Hold your ground. Not one step back." But reality couldn't be denied. By January 10th, German forces began withdrawing. Ordered or not, they retreated. The Bulge was collapsing. January 16th, 1945. Houffalize, Belgium. Patton's Third Army, driving north from Bastogne, met elements of First Army driving south. The pincers had closed. The Bulge was cut in half. German forces trapped inside were surrounded. Those outside scrambled to escape back to Germany. The salient that had penetrated 60 miles into Allied territory was eliminated. The front line was back where it started on December 15th. The Battle of the Bulge was over. January 20th to 25th, 1945. German forces retreated across the Siegfried Line back into Germany. They left behind 600-plus tanks, destroyed or abandoned. 1,000-plus artillery pieces. 6,000-plus vehicles. 100,000 casualties, killed, wounded, missing, captured. The retreat was chaos. Allied aircraft strafed the columns. Artillery pounded retreat routes. Tanks were abandoned for lack of fuel. The same German units that had burst through American lines 5 weeks earlier now limp home in defeat. The Wehrmacht, once the most powerful army in the world, was shattered. Germany's last reserves were gone. The Eastern and Western fronts both beckoned. Hitler's gamble had failed utterly. The road to Berlin was open. The Battle of the Bulge was the largest and bloodiest battle American forces fought in World War II. American casualties asterisk 89,000, 19,000 killed, 47,500 wounded, 23,000 captured or missing. German casualties asterisk 100,000, 12,500 killed, 38,600 wounded, 30,000 captured, 19,000 missing. British casualties asterisk 1,400, 200 killed, 1,200 wounded. Civilian casualties asterisk 3,000 plus Belgian civilians killed. Total asterisk over 190,000 casualties in 6 weeks. More American soldiers were killed or wounded in the Bulge than the entire Revolutionary War. It was America's deadliest battle in Europe, deadlier than D-Day. Deadlier than the liberation of France. And for what? Germany gained nothing. No territory held. No strategic advantage. The offensive delayed the Allied advance by 6 weeks. That's all. In exchange, Germany destroyed its last reserves. The forces used in the Bulge could have defended Berlin. Instead, they died in Belgium. The price was paid in blood. On both sides. February 1945. Allied forces reached the Siegfried Line, Germany's western defense fortifications. Before the Bulge, the Siegfried Line might have held for months. But Germany no longer had the troops to man it. The reserves squandered in the Ardennes were gone. The Allies breached the line within days. By March 1945, American forces crossed the Rhine River, the last natural barrier protecting Germany. British and Canadian forces advanced from the north. Soviet forces closed from the east. Germany was being crushed from all sides. The war, Hitler said, would last 1,000 years would end in 12. March 1945. Hitler retreated to his bunker beneath Berlin. The Battle of the Bulge had been his last card, his final gamble. It had failed, but Hitler refused to accept reality. He blamed his generals, cowards, traitors, incompetents. He blamed the Wehrmacht. They lack will. They lack faith. He blamed the German people. They are not worthy of me. He did not blame himself. In his mind, the offensive had succeeded. The Allies were defeated. Victory was near. His staff knew better. But no one dared contradict him. 6 weeks later, on April 30th, 1945, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. 8 days later, Germany surrendered. The Battle of the Bulge had not saved Germany. It had merely prolonged the agony. Decades after the battle, veterans returned to the Ardennes. American, British, German. Old men now, standing in the forest where they fought as young men. One American veteran, 101st Airborne, stood at Bastogne. We were so cold, so hungry, so scared, but we didn't break. We couldn't. Our buddies depended on us. A German veteran, 6th Panzer Army. We believed we could win. We were told this would end the war. Instead, it ended us. An American tank commander, 4th Armored Division. I lost friends in that forest. Good men. They saved Bastogne. They saved Europe. We owe them everything. A Belgian civilian, survivor of the battle. The Americans came. Then the Germans. Then the Americans again. Our town was destroyed, but we were free. That's what mattered. The last survivors are gone now, but their story lives on. In memorials, in cemeteries, in history. The Battle of the Bulge is remembered. Did the Battle of the Bulge matter strategically? Yes, but not the way Hitler intended. Hitler's goal: split the Allies, force negotiated peace, redirect forces east against Soviets. What actually happened? Allies delayed 6 weeks, but not stopped. Germany's last reserves destroyed. Eastern Front left undefended. While Germany gambled in Belgium, the Soviets advanced 200 miles in Poland. By January 1945, Soviet forces were 40 miles from Berlin. Germany had traded 6 weeks' delay in the West for losing the entire Eastern Front. The Battle of the Bulge didn't save Germany. It ensured Germany would be conquered by the Soviets rather than defending until a negotiated peace. Hitler's last gamble destroyed Germany. The Battle of the Bulge proved something else: American resilience. On December 16th, many American units were green, inexperienced, untested. The 106th Division collapsed within 48 hours. 8,000 men captured. But others, the 101st at Bastogne, the 7th Armored at St. Vith, held against overwhelming odds. The American soldier, written off by German generals as soft and undisciplined, proved he could fight and win under the worst conditions. Surprise attack, winter cold, surrounded, outnumbered. The Battle of the Bulge was America's coming of age. They'd faced the best Germany could throw at them, and won. Today, Bastogne is a quiet Belgian town, but McAuliffe Square, named after the general who said "nuts," stands at its center. A memorial honors the 101st Airborne and the defenders who held the town. Tourists visit the Bastogne War Museum. They walk the foxholes where paratroopers froze and fought. Every December, ceremonies honor those who died. Bastogne has become more than a town. It's a symbol of defiance, of resilience, of refusing to surrender when all seems lost. Nuts entered American language. It means you can threaten us, surround us, outnumber us. We will not break. That's the legacy of Bastogne. That's the legacy of the Bulge. They rest now in quiet fields. Luxembourg American Cemetery *, 5,073 American dead. Henri Chapelle Cemetery, Belgium *, 7,992 American dead. Ardennes American Cemetery, Belgium * 5,329 American dead. And across the border, in German military cemeteries. Ricon, Belgium * 6,807 German dead. Lamel, Belgium * 542 German dead from the Bulge. Over 25,000 graves. White crosses and stars of David stretching in perfect rows. Each one a life. A son, a brother, a father, a husband. They came from Iowa farms and Brooklyn streets. From Munich and Hamburg. From Yorkshire and Toronto. They fought in frozen forests for reasons most didn't fully understand. And they died there for their countries, for their comrades, for freedom. We remember them. The Ardennes is filled with memorials. The Martyson Memorial overlooks Bastogne, a star-shaped monument honoring American forces. The Bognez 44 Historical Center stands near Malmedy, remembering the massacre. Sherman tanks mark crossroads where battles raged. Foxholes are preserved in forests. Belgian villages have plaques thanking American liberators. Every December, Ceremonies honor the fallen. Veterans, when they were still alive, returned, shook hands with former enemies, forgave. Belgian children learn the history. They know American soldiers died to free their grandparents. The memory is preserved. The lesson is taught. War is hell. Freedom is precious. Both truths are carved in stone in the Ardennes. The veterans who survived carried burdens. Frostbite, injuries, trauma, but also guilt. Why did I survive when my buddy didn't? Donald Burgett, 101st Airborne, returned to Bastogne 50 years later. Asterisk, I see their faces. The men in my foxhole. We promised we'd all make it home. I was the only one who did. Asterisk, Richard Winters, Easy Company, 101st Airborne. Asterisk, we were kids. 19, 20 years old. We grew old in 6 weeks. Asterisk, the Battle of the Bulge aged them, changed them, haunted them, but they also took pride. They'd faced the worst and endured. That generation, the greatest generation, was forged in the Ardennes. They came home, built America, raised families, never forgot. Historians debate. What if Hitler had not launched the Bulge Offensive? What if those 250,000 men and 1,000 tanks had been kept in reserve? What if Germany had defended Berlin with its last strength instead of squandering it in Belgium? The war might have lasted longer, perhaps into summer 1945. More Allied casualties, more suffering. But Germany's defeat was inevitable. The Bulge didn't change that. It only made Germany's collapse faster and more complete. Hitler's last gamble was his final strategic mistake. It destroyed the army that might have defended Germany's core. In trying to win, Hitler ensured Germany lost everything. Today, the Ardennes forest is peaceful. Hikers walk trails where soldiers died. Families picnic in fields where tanks burned. The scars have faded. But if you look closely, you can still find them. Foxholes in the forest. Shrapnel embedded in trees. Craters filled with leaves. The Bulge shaped history. It proved democracies could fight and win. Even when surprised, even under worse conditions. It proved dictatorships gamble and lose, even with surprise and numerical advantage. It proved ordinary men, farmers, clerks, teachers, can become heroes when circumstances demand. The soldiers who fought in the Bulge didn't think they were making history. They were cold, scared, tired, trying to survive the next minute. But collectively, they saved the world. 19,000 Americans died in the Ardennes. The Battle of the Bulge was hell, but it was also humanity's triumph over tyranny. We remember, we honor, we learn. They were ordinary men asked to do extraordinary things. Farm boys from Kansas, factory workers from Detroit, immigrants seeking the American dream. They were cold, they were scared, they were far from home. But when their country called, they answered. When their buddies needed them, they stood. When surrounded, outnumbered and freezing, they did not break. This is their story. This is the Battle of the Bulge.